saying it's 1 o'clock, so it's go time. Awesome. What a day so far, huh? What was that keynote this morning? Wasn't that a great experience? Everyone, I mean, I could just feel the excitement in the air. Everyone watching what's going on with BlackBerry 10, seeing the new stuff, and the fact that we're now here actually bringing the content to our own backyard here in Waterloo. Personally, this is a very exciting moment for me to be in front of my peers and neighbors, to be presenting this content, to be talking about this passionate subject matter that I've been so focused on for the last couple of years, now to be here as well. I am Adam Stanley. For those who don't know me, I see a lot of friendly faces today, people I do know from past, present, and hopefully future projects. So thanks very much for joining me today. I'm also joined by my colleague Chad. Do you mind standing up? Just showing everyone your yard. Chad's the rookie, the new guy to the team. Just joined 2 weeks ago, is that right? 2.5? Yeah? Awesome. So it's a real pleasure to have him, co-presenting with me today. If you're here for the web track, you're in the right place. If not, you better go find where you're actually supposed to be. The way we formatted today's content is that each track has 4 sessions with a short 10 to 15-minute break in between. So if you feel like you want to jump in between sessions, go over to the native one, come back to the web one, so on, depending on which sessions you want to hit, you're more than welcome to do so. Also, all of the slides for this content is available online. So if you missed something, or if you did want to catch up on the enterprise track or the native track, it's all available online. All the slides are there. Okay. So what we're going to start out today is a bit of an introductory session to the general BlackBerry web platform, talk about tools, product and services, APIs, levels of web browser support, and so on. Go into a bit more advanced topic, touching on WebGL, Web Inspector, advanced debugging, and then trickle into the really cool stuff like BBUI and some of the cool work with third-party frameworks. And we actually have a real exciting surprise for everyone. We're going to show a demo of a brand new product that's never been shown in public before today. We're going to do that here. So I'm really glad to see we have a full room. That's pretty awesome stuff. Just before we get started, just raise a hand. Who here is a web developer? Awesome. So pretty much everyone. That's good. I'm happy to hear that. We're generally keeping the topic level at a beginner to introductory level, but we're definitely going to jump in and out of very advanced subject matter. And personally, I prefer to be interrupted. So if you have a question or comment, or you have a disagreement, you want to ask a tough question, by all means, just shout it out or raise your hand if you prefer. And I prefer to address it immediately rather than wait until the end when we may not have enough time. Okay. So without further ado, let's get started. So the BlackBerry web platform, for those who've been with us for a number of years, you've probably seen a very significant evolution in quality. When I started at RIM, my first device was an 8800. Anyone ever use one of those? Running 4.3, 4.5, back in the Stone Ages. And back then, RIM actually had its own proprietary web engine. It was based off of mid-P Java. It was pretty good at the time. It did things that you couldn't do on other mobile devices. But this was 2006, 2007 or so. So since then, there's been some significant advancements. And a lot of that's really been driven by competition and open source. About 3 years ago, RIM acquired a company called Torch Mobile. Some of you folks actually know these individuals. They're based in Toronto, but they're now part of the BlackBerry family, who are leading contributors to the WebKit browser engine. And they integrated that into the first BlackBerry device to run a WebKit-powered browser. That was the Torch 9800, BlackBerry 6. And since then, the quality and level of rendering fidelity and web support has skyrocketed. And the proof is in the online benchmark tests that anyone in this room can pull up their device and test with. Right? HTML5 test obviously is a really good high-level score as to how well a browser supports certain HTML5 features. You'll notice on Playbook, Tablet OS 2.0, it's in first place for all tablets. That's all in-market tablets. And coming down the pipe, BlackBerry 10 is leading the charge as a beta product. It's very close with the Dolphin browser platform, if anyone's following that as well, which is really exciting to see because that's also an open source sort of community project that's happening there. So it's really, really cool that web developers have such a powerful platform to go with. Some of the cool, exciting pieces about the BlackBerry platform, not only are its great levels of HTML5 and CSS3 support, you can do almost anything you want with HTML5 on the BlackBerry platform. We're even pushing the boundaries of some of the new experimental APIs that you can play with, getting into things like WebGL being the primary one of them, and we're going to actually show some demos of that and talk about that a bit today. Why is this important? Like, why do we even care? I saw a great raise of hands from all web developers, so I think everyone agrees with me in that the web is a really awesome place to be for a reason. All these different platforms strive to support similar standards in order to provide a consistent experience. Right? You as a web developer really want to ensure that the experience you're designing and providing is consistent regardless of which device or desktop browser or platform your users are trying to connect to. Right, so if you can bring that great web content to BlackBerry and we implement our browser engine in a great way, you're going to be successful, right? You're going to be able to provide that experience. And so that's what we want, and that's what we've done. So what exactly can you actually do with this? Why does this even matter? Why is HTML5 such a buzzword? I think a lot of the general community thinks of HTML5 as this magical cloud that solves every problem, and it's glorious, and if you put that on your stock price, it'll go up. That's true. Yeah, well, personally, I think that's true. There's a lot of excitement around it, and the reason why is fundamentally there's some really cool features that have been introduced into the browsers that you just couldn't do before. And most notably, these are integration with underlying hardware or services pieces, right? So being able to retrieve the user's GPS coordinates opens up a world of possibilities to the types of applications and content that you can provide, right? Anyone done like location-aware advertising or location-aware content, points of interest? It's an entire industry, entire marketplace there, and so on. The concept of really advanced offline storage means your users no longer need to have an active network connection. Again, opens up new worlds of opportunities, and these are all available through the HTML5 spec. Some examples of these, these are actually pulled straight from App World. Anyone who owns a Playbook already has this app, Slacker, radio station app. It was rewritten in WebWorks in HTML5 for the Playbook launch. So everything you're seeing when looking at Slacker is all web content. And they took advantage of a lot of these features to provide that amazing experience. BlackBerry WebWorks. Has anyone not used the BlackBerry WebWorks platform? A couple people? All right. That's good, right? Because, that's exciting. I was part of the initial launch, which was about 3.5 years ago. A lot of people don't realize that the WebWorks platform is actually that old. It was launched on the Java platform a long time ago. As the rest of the audience knows, it's a application framework for building web applications that run fully featured and standalone on the device. Right? So it's not a runtime, kind of like the .NET framework where your content runs or depends on a framework, a runtime. It's an actual compiled standalone app that you deploy to App World and install to your device through any sort of those deployment channels. We've enabled this to give developers a choice. Right? As Alec presented this morning, choice can be good. It gives more developers, like a wider audience of developers, the opportunity to bring their content or their innovation to the BlackBerry platform. So we want to provide world-class experiences to each of those platforms, specifically to HTML5 developers. These are some real-world examples you can actually find in App World today. Each of these are for the Playbook platform. So you'll notice there's a wide variety of content out there. It's not the WebWorks platform is not specific to the media industry, the sports industry, or so on. It's pretty much anyone who sees web as the mechanism for getting their experience and getting their content out into the user, into the community. So big brands like The Economist and Huffington Post have recognized that they have a lot of existing web assets. They already have websites. They have web services and content out there. And wouldn't it be great if they could reuse at least some of that in some way to transform that to a standalone application experience? And they've done so through a variety of not only web frameworks or libraries, things like jQueries or Senchas or Dojers or so on, but also application frameworks like WebWorks and even in some cases PhoneGap. And then Rogers Any hockey fans out there? If you've ever used the Hockey Central app, that's actually a WebWorks application. Sports Central, anyone? No, not Sports Central. Score Mobile is what I meant to say. Another WebWorks app. And then even Pasktop, this is an app that was put together by one of the regional development managers in Thailand, who wanted to prepare some content to present to his group and used the WebWorks platform as a way of preparing different tutorials and examples that he then shared with his group and has enabled them to be successful as well. So he put together this multi-service app that does a bunch of things. You can take notes, you can play audio and video, it grabs your geolocation and so on. So it's really, really cool thing, most notably as a learning resource. Visually, of course, this is how the WebWorks architecture looks. So you start with your content. Before you even consider the BlackBerry platform, you start with your standardized web content. This is content that should work and behave consistently in modern browsers. Right? You create great visual experiences and rich interactive experiences as well. You follow the rules, right? Make sure that your HTML, your CSS and JavaScript is all follow standards, it's written correctly, and so on. And then you extend it. So you take advantage of whatever web platform that content is running on, right? So some content may look different in Chrome and Safari versus Firefox because we got different web engines under the covers implementing them. They're both trying to follow the same rules and standards. So in a perfect world, you'd have the exact same experience across the two. But it's just not like that. But once we get down to level of interest in saying, okay, now I've reached the limit of what I can do with WebKit and standards. How do I take advantage of unique platform-specific features? Right? How do I integrate with the BlackBerry calendar and inbox? These aren't web standards that you can do in like a desktop browser because it doesn't exist, right? This is where the WebWorks platform comes in and solves that scenario. So it provides a container for your application that connects this web content with the underlying BlackBerry platform through these APIs. Another visual of how to get there, how to get from content to actual devices. And if you'll note, we've got 3 different platforms represented here. So we've got the Java smartphone platform, the Playbook Tablet OS platform, and the new BlackBerry 10 platform. And WebWorks allows you to bring the exact same web content over to each of those quite easily. The packaging process for WebWorks is quite simple yet sophisticated, and it takes advantage of different frameworks from each of these. So it builds a Java app for the Java-based smartphones. It builds an Air containered app for the tablet OS because that's the available runtime to you. And actually what it's doing for the BlackBerry 10 is building a native application. So if you were to pull apart your compiled app for your BlackBerry 10 device, you'd actually see, it's built with native APIs and native hooks because that's the most powerful platform at the lowest level available on that device. What we're going to show you in a moment is not only the WebWorks SDK, but also Ripple. Ripple Mobile Emulator is a very powerful and cool tool for web developers, not just BlackBerry developers, but web developers in general. It was designed by a group called the Tiny Hippos, who are here, based here in KW. Some of you who spent time at either the Communitech Hub or if you've ever been to Mobiers or any of the sort of local developer meetups, you probably know them. They're really great guys, and they created this amazing developer tool that's now part of this mobile developer ecosystem. Okay, just want to quickly go through some of these, some actual examples of what it means to implement some of these features and APIs that are available. So, say you want to do more than just a form or a static page. Say you want to take advantage of some of these HTML5 or WebWorks APIs, and maybe we're not familiar with what they look like. Just wanted to quickly show you some samples. So the storage problem, very important problem, specifically how it translates into application performance. Right? You start up your application a second time. You want to see all the content you had available to you before. You don't want to have to re-download that. Right? So the solution to that problem lies in storing that stuff somewhere. So the old way of doing this was rather difficult. I think you only had cookies available to you, which only had a tiny little piece of memory. I think it was 4K, and it went over the air, so it was slow. The evolution of that, as I see it, is the local storage API, where you now have at least a 5 megabyte block in the client per domain, where you can store name-value pairs to. You can quickly retrieve them. It's very efficient. There's frameworks that are built off of it that automatically cache data there. And great developer tools like Web Inspector, which we're going to touch on later on, make it really easy to debug and troubleshoot this. WebDB, if you need a bit more advanced, structured way of saving this data, you can take advantage of SQL. WebDB on BlackBerry is powered by a SQLite database that's running under the covers. And we are evolving that, because as some of you know, the spec that's defined by W3C for the WebDB has gone out of, what's the official term for it? They're not supporting it anymore. They're not making any more future changes to it. And they're now driving all their attention toward indexed DB. So to nip this in the bud, we are very interested in supporting indexed DB. And the BlackBerry, the Torch browser team is spending a lot of time and energy putting that towards it. And if you were to go to HTML5test.com today, you would see it. You'd see a check mark next to IndexedDB for the BlackBerry 10 Dev Alpha preview. So I'm expecting to see that there at launch or closely thereafter, so we can start playing around with that API then. Touch, as we know, the BlackBerry Dev Alpha device is a touch-only device. Playbook is as well. So as a web developer, understanding how touch works on a platform and how that translates into interaction with your content, simple things like buttons or more advanced things like gestures and so on, those principles are very important to understand. What I wanted to highlight was that the browser engine itself provides a wide variety of default behaviors for you, right? Pinch to zoom, it's just automatically there and it works kind of like the user would expect it to. Swipe up and down, moves like it pans the content up and down. Did you ever wonder, why are those there? What if I wanted to provide a completely different experience in my app, such as locking the content in place so you can't zoom it? As a web developer, you can do all of those things. You can override defaults. You can change behaviors. You can customize the touch experience specifically to how you want it to be in your application. And it's all done with event listeners, the on-touch start event, touch move, touch end. The touch model on BlackBerry is different than on iPhone and iPad. If you're familiar with those platforms, they use taps and gestures, whereas we're a bit more fundamentally lower level. And we've received positive feedback for implementing it at that layer, because you can translate these touch events into gestures very easily, whereas it's a bit more difficult to go in the other direction, right? So, for example, say you had an image on your page. When your user, raised their finger off of it, or if they wanted to drag it around and raise their finger off of it, how would you capture each of those events? Well, you go to touch start, touch move, touch end. But if you were on a tap-based system, the only interaction you would get is when you let go of the finger, right? Tap. So it's very powerful. Playbook supports 4-finger simultaneous touch events, so you can have 4 fingers down at the same time. Your app can be reading data from those 4 events simultaneously. I'm under the understanding that BlackBerry 10 Dev Alpha has the exact same thing, so 4-finger as well. Are we so far so good? Any questions so far? No? Okay. Device motion. Has anyone ever developed an app that uses the accelerometer? No? Did you know you can do that? We got 2 in the back. Did you know you can do that in the web platform? There's an accelerometer API built into the browser that you can use to read physical movement of the device. So if you want to build a game or any sort of application that instead of your users touching checkboxes and radio buttons and so on, was actually moving the device itself in physical space and using those movements as a way of providing input into your application, you can do that quite easily. There's this event listener, again, with a device motion event, that when it fires, you get X, Y, and Z movement, acceleration, including gravity, excluding gravity, and so on. So we've seen this done as a sample that we've published on GitHub. It was an application called Aura, created by the Astonishing Tribe, actually a few years ago, that's been out there in GitHub for a while. So if you're interested in seeing how this is done in a real-world application, I invite you to download that application and check it out. Geolocation, this is a real common one. I hope everyone's at least had a chance to play around with it. It's quite easy to do. There's a common interface across any browser platform that implements this API. Geolocation.getCurrentPosition, and then there's callbacks to success and failure events, of course, right? The power of this is, of course, now you can provide location-aware content. So you can do things like I mentioned earlier, targeted advertising or points of interest or so on. Really cool thing is, depending on the device and the platform, you can specify a high or a low accuracy, right? So if you need to provide some feedback whether or not your user is in a given city, that would be a high accuracy fix, right? The benefit of a high accuracy fix is it's quick, it's really fast. Whereas a low accuracy may be taking longer to wait for the satellite or the carrier to send down your actual position, which is far more accurate, of course. It would tell you that we're in this room, or it would tell me that I'm 5 or 6 feet away from Chad. But again, the experience is a trade-off, so it's up to developers to decide which one that they want to use. Notifications. So, push has been the bread and butter on the BlackBerry platform for forever. You have a server that's sending down, proactively sending down messages and notifications to a Java app. How do we do that on the web side of things? Well, there was demand for a similar experience, and so this has become a standard, web notifications. Having an application notify the system that something has happened, and then the system translating that event into a consistent experience based off of the given UI. So anyone who's ever used Chrome and ever seen a little pop-up window in the bottom right corner with some messaging, it was a web notification. This often happens when you update or install extensions, or some websites themselves are doing this. On Playbook, the exact same JavaScript-based code would initiate a system little bubble in the top left-hand corner. You get the red pulse, and then when you open it, you actually see the content of that notification. So you as a web developer have the ability to provide a native or a system-level experience in a real cool and easy to implement way. Going forward on BlackBerry 10 Dev Alpha, we're going to strive to provide consistent experience as well, so that whatever location on the device represents the system notification area, that's where your web notification would go to. Cool. And sockets, real-time communication. This is prior to any discussion about WebRTC. We've got the ability to have persistent connections between either two clients or a client and a server to send data back and forth between them. Great for things like real-time games or even real-time communication. So anyone who's ever used Twitter, in the Chrome browser, if you ever go view source or Web Inspector, you're going to see all sorts of activity going on because they're using WebSockets, HTML5 WebSockets under the covers. And that's why you see tweets show up in real time. It's not polling. It's not using AJAX to periodically send out requests to pull down new data. It's just waiting for the server to send an update. And that's really efficient for battery life and good experience in the page as well. It can be kind of complicated. I mean, there's a bit of learning curve, understanding how it works. And so there's a few frameworks out there that have tried to take that effort out of the equation for you by providing a library for you to just plug into your app and start using. Socket.io is a free implementation, and Pusher is a paid-based service with more services and features. You should definitely check both of them out and choose whichever one matters to you or should be used for your application. And WebGL. So, yeah, WebGL. This was a really exciting announcement we had at DevCon. I think it was maybe a year ago. We're the first mobile platform to offer full, real WebGL to developers, which is a really big achievement and represents our commitment to providing a world-class web browser platform to our developers. And what I mean by that is developers can actually write raw WebGL code, vector, new primitive, do something, blah, blah, blah. It's not part of a framework. So I think on other platforms, they do support WebGL, but it's built into things like the advertising SDK on that platform. So your application may have WebGL running in it, but you as a developer can't really do more with it than that. So we've completely opened it up. You can write a 99% WebGL game and then wrap that up in a WebWorks application to complete the other 1% and push that out to App World. We've done that with Tunnel Tilt. We've put that in App World to make it easier for users to find it and also open source the code on GitHub for it. So if you want to see how that application was built, go download the code. There's another example that I wanted to show on, here it is. Can we switch to the HTML, please? So this is on my playbook. So we've got, of course, Tunnel Tilt, which if you haven't seen by now, I'd be surprised because we're marketing the crap out of it. So it's just you actually use the accelerometer to move a ball through. Oh, I may have unplugged it. Yes, I did. The cable's a little. There we go. Yeah, so I crashed. It's a free download. If you have a playbook, you should definitely check it out. It's pretty cool to see. WebScape, something we're going to do a little deep dive into the next presentation on, but I just quickly wanted to show it. This is something that one of my colleagues, Eric, made just as a proof of concept so he could learn a bit more about how to use WebGL. And I think it took him a week or so to do it. Almost everything you see here is just pure WebGL, and you use WebWorks to package it up, of course. And then 3JS I think I'll save for the next presentation. That's a third-party framework that makes writing WebGL content a bit easier. Laptop, please. Thanks. All right. Continuing this discussion, so input types, I think, are the easiest, yet one of the most powerful ways of improving the user experience in your app. It's totally free. So did you know that most touchscreen devices that display virtual keyboards offer up different variants of those keyboards? It's not always the exact same alphanumeric keyboard. There's numeric flavors. There's email-specific ones. There's URL ones. And on BlackBerry, that's very, very true. In fact, we support most of the input types very well, even up to date and color input types. So rather than just defining a bunch of text input fields in your forms, customize them appropriately to the type of data that you're expecting to collect. So if you're asking your user to enter a phone number, or if you have a secure payment page and they're entering like a credit card number or some number, offer up a numeric field, right? Make it easier for them to enter correct data so that they don't accidentally fill out the wrong value and put it in. It's free. If the given browser doesn't support the tel or the number or the date input types, it'll just display it as a text box. So the user will benefit from it when they're running it on a browser or web platform that supports it, and it'll be the exact same experience to them otherwise. So I really encourage everyone to consider using that. The WebWorks APIs. So this is where we've taken functionality to the next level and extended some features that are available from the BlackBerry platform. So yes, you have a question?
With the input fields, is there a way you can combine them at all? Like if you have a password that's only ever numeric, is there a way to have it launch out clear appropriately?
That's a good question. The question was, can you combine input types and have like a numeric password field? For the purpose of displaying a virtual keyboard, I think the answer to that is no. But I know that some platforms also allow you to, I think the short answer is no. And the reason why is because there's also validation happening in some cases. So if you define a numeric input type on BlackBerry and you get this virtual keyboard, if you start typing, if you were to change that using the ABC button in the bottom left there to the alphanumeric and typed like a letter A, I think it would actually display a little message saying, invalid field. But because you define, it's hard to see it right there, but because you define it in your HTML markup as type equals URL, I think it's just one. It's just a single thing. Yes, question?
You can define
A custom validator? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So that's done at the JavaScript layer? Yeah. Yeah, right. Thanks. Okay. Yeah, so WebWorks APIs. There's a collection of JavaScript-based objects that are built into the WebWorks framework that WebWorks applications can use. browser, if your web content is running in the browser and they try to access these objects, you get undefined or runtime errors because they don't exist. They haven't been built into the environment, and the browser has no idea what like the invoke or the identity API is because they're just not part of that context. That's the purpose of the WebWorks framework, is to provide a secure container where you as a developer, define which APIs your app is allowed to access and can leverage this really advanced functionality. We have a number of learning resources, of course, published online. I wrote up a kitchen sink sample and put it in GitHub, free for download. It shows you how to do pretty much all of the APIs to use them in your app. And I've really provided really simple and straightforward examples and use cases to make it easy for you to just copy and paste the code over. But we've also taken it to the next level and provided WebWorks APIs for certain platform services. So, on the BlackBerry Java platform, we have the BBM SDK. So if you wanted to use BlackBerry Messenger features in your web-based content, you can do so on that platform through the BBM API, which is really powerful and really cool. And our intent going forward into BlackBerry 10 is also to provide similar services. Custom extensions. So what happens when you want to use a BlackBerry feature that RIM hasn't provided through the framework? How do you access that content? Well, you can build your own. You can build a wrapper, which we call a custom extension or a custom API, to wrap the underlying platform code in a JavaScript container and then access that from your web content just as you would any other thing. So as a reminder, that platform code on BlackBerry smartphone system is Java. On Playbook, it's actually Air, and BlackBerry 10 it's C and C++. And this just represents the evolution of the platform towards its current standard. And of course, as we've promised, the intent is, once BlackBerry 10 is complete and rolled out onto, the smartphone platform, it's also going to eventually be made available on the tablet as well. So you have both OSs running on each, and then you'll have C and C++ running on each, so your application has more support across both of those. Visually, this is what an extension looks like on each of these platforms. So on Java, it's actually, when I first started building my own, I found it kind of overwhelming because there's a lot of pieces to it. You have to have different containers for each of them to do, for where you define different places. There's a lot of moving parts. It got a lot simpler on Adobe Air because ActionScript makes everything easy. You just have one class and define everything inside that as well. Moving on to BlackBerry 10, it's become a bit more logical and modular. So there's actually a JavaScript piece of your extension that plugs into your app and into the OS. And through JNext, I don't know if anyone's ever used JNext before, that's how the JavaScript communicates with the underlying C and C++. So you as a developer would build your interface for your app in the JavaScript piece. You would connect it to any underlying native code. Say you wanted to have an NFC API. Any C or C++ code you have available to speak to the NFC layer, such as the samples we've published, you can easily port that over to BlackBerry. And all of these, of course, are open source. We've invited our community to participate in publishing their own extensions. So we have a WebWorks community API repo out there. There's 3 projects. There's a BB10, smartphone, and tablet. And each of them are starting to grow with contributions. So there's actually a huge number of them in the smartphone one. The tablet one is catching up. And we just opened up the BB10 one because we provided extension support last week for the very first time. So that's just started. Each of them have a template. So if you were to, we wanted just to download a starter app, a starter extension, and just replace little bits of code in it to learn how to use it, the template is definitely the right way to go. All right, I think Chad's going to take over the rest of this presentation. I just want to hand this over to him. Did you want to take this guy or this guy? Here. Here's this guy.
Okay, so I'm Chad Tatro. I was initially a third-party developer and joined the developer relations team here a couple weeks ago. So trying to catch up on time a bit here, so keep moving. Basically, with BlackBerry 10, WebWorks has been completely rebuilt, and it no longer, the back end of it no longer runs in Java like it did on the smartphone previously. It's now native C, C++, so as Adam was saying, with extensions, If you make a custom extension, now it'll be C++. The packager has also been completely rebuilt, and it's using Node.js to deploy to the smartphone. And the alignment of the APIs, we've been really trying to follow the alignment of the Cordova project to make it easier for developers to kind of use the two platforms. Another really cool thing about using BlackBerry 10 and actually 7 and up OSs is the, Okay, so Ripple. It's a Chrome extension. And if you haven't used Ripple, it's basically a debugging tool for mobile.
Why don't I bring it up while you're
Yeah.
just talking? I'll just show everyone. All right.
So yeah, basically you use Ripple to, you can test out your application in the browser instead of having to deploy to the device. And it's real handy. It saves a lot of time.
That's not working.
Getting her there?
Yeah. I just wanted to bring up a live page, but the Wi-Fi is being funky.
So initially we had released it as an extension to Chrome. It was followed by a standalone version. And now again is back to an extension. And this is good because it allows any updates or fixes to the WebKit engine to basically automatically gives you that advantage. You don't have to re-download a whole standalone version and whatnot. So a little handier for developers.
Yeah. And if you haven't used it before, I'm just going to quick demo. You can easily switch platforms. So if you wanted to see how your web content looks on the BlackBerry 10 device, you pick BlackBerry 10 platform, and there's the Dev Alpha profile. It's actually running a bit of an iframe in there that's rendering your content. So same way that you would test a web page in a browser, you may set up your application on your local host and access it. Now Ripple provides a preview of how that content would look on a live device. And then you can easily switch between different platforms. So you're like, okay, how does the same content look on a playbook with different screen sizes and screen resolutions? The WebWorks platform, so the smartphone platform. And there's this devices panel where you can pick from any number of devices that are available on that platform.
So yeah, it's really a good tool. Saves you lots of time. You can see how things are laid out on the screen better. Just really valuable to use. If you haven't used it, definitely check it out.
I'll go back for you.
So yeah, one of the new cool features in Ripple and the newer releases are being able to actually build, sign, and deploy your app to the device right through Ripple. So it kind of takes that, using the command prompt and all the, text commands, kind of takes that out a little. It makes it a lot easier, a lot quicker, and definitely a lot better as a developer, I would say. Here we go. We're just kind of showing what Adam showed you on the screen there. Also has some API emulation built in. You can do things like background the application, bring it to the foreground, just to kind of test it out in the browser a bit more. Another cool feature, we'll be going over this a lot more in depth in one of the next sessions there, Remote Web Inspector. And this allows you to connect to your device, to a live device through your web browser to do any debugging. And you can profile the performance of the memory. Maybe something's loading slow. You got a console if you have any errors coming up that show up at runtime. And it works on simulators, live devices. Really, really valuable tool, and we'll definitely get more into that. This is just showing how these are the first 4 APIs we actually released, BlackBerry Jam Orlando. They were just there. They're the most common APIs that people have used in their applications, and just wanted to give developers a chance back at the time when Developer Alphas came out to kind of get started, get their feet wet with the platform. And we're just showing here it's now you're tying into the native C++ rather than Java on the previous smartphones. One of the biggest differences, if you've used WebWorks in the past, will be pointer here. You'll notice that at the top of your application, you'll be including the webworks.js. This is very similar to anyone who's used PhoneGap or now the Cordova project, you'll be very familiar with that already. And one of the other key things to note here is the, okay, got no pointer, the WebWorks ready function. There we go. Before you call any APIs from now on with BlackBerry 10, you need to make sure that that function is fired first. So here we're basically adding an event listener, waiting for WebWorks to say that it's ready, the environment's set up, and now we can, the start would be our function where we could initialize anything we wanted to, do any initial API calls, but have to make sure that is ready before we try to access any device APIs. So here we have just another example of some must-have features that we have here. It's an example of backgrounding your application. This is also kind of aligned to the same way that Cordova does it. So say in this case here, we're at an event listener for pause. So say you background your application. If it's a game, we don't want the game to keep running. We want it to pause. Maybe it's an application where you want to save a current state. Maybe save some content in local storage. This is where you would listen and do that. And of course, the resume is the exact opposite. The user's brought the application back to the foreground, and we want to maybe refresh content, whatever you decide, whatever works for your application, but gives you a little handle, a little more control on that. As Adam mentioned, custom extensions are now supported in BlackBerry 10. They're all written in C, C++ now, which is a little bit different than previously, but still kind of under works, so there may be some minor changes if you do decide to take on making an extension right now. May have to make some minor tweaks here and there, but definitely trying to keep it as easy as possible so you don't have to do too much. And extensions, again, are really good. Sometimes the API can't do exactly what you need it to do. It's not the end of the road for you now. You can make an extension, add that extra functionality to your app, and really just, sky's the limit from there. I think we had a screenshot there that showed an app I made called Lens Boost, and that actually used a extension to, in our case, it was to grab some pixel data. We modified an image, we needed to save that data, but there's no API to do that, so we had in that case, it was a Java extension. Here's our roadmap. We've been trying to have incremental monthly releases of APIs. I think so far we've been pretty on schedule with that.
Yeah.
Where are we here? So probably to save a bit of time here for you, what's coming up here next? Has anybody seen the new dashboard for the APIs?
I was just going to flip to
You guys
it,
seen
actually. Yeah, so if you were
Pretty
to
cool.
go to the HTML5 microsite, I believe it's just this first bullet pops up. We now have, I think the Wi-Fi, there it is. We have this arrivals board, and this is what Tim was talking about. Let me see if I can go the other way. Oops. There we are.
So yeah, it's, that came out, I think it went live yesterday, I believe, actually. And pretty cool interface. Lets you know where we're at, where we're going here. You see September up there, November, a little off topic right now, but so yeah, if you want to see, if you want to learn anything else about the APIs, you see, let's say, yeah, we've got BBM, a bit of a BBM integration coming in September, so just click it, get a bit more info.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just a nice little, layout.
The intention is that this content will be ready before the BlackBerry 10 Jam Americas event in San Jose. So for any developers interested in seeing like real deep dives into each of these subjects, definitely consider coming to that event to see those demos. Oh.
So yeah, just recapping on, I'll just touch a couple of them. Virtual keyboard events, you'll be able to tell, has the keyboard been opened on the screen, has it been closed? Context menu is pretty cool. You're able to, if you tap and hold on something on the screen, we're used to the context menu popping up. And now you'll be able to add, or I believe remove, might be wrong about that, but
Which one?
the context menu. At least we can add custom items to it for sure. I'll have to double check.
Yep.
Then as we show the BBM profile tie in there as well already. So definitely, if you want more information, there's our website, developer.blackberry.com/HTML5. I know we kind of go over quite a bit real quick here in the session, so if you have any questions, can answer them now, or if you want to just go to the website, look up stuff. Yep.
So I've never done WebWorks before, but I've done a lot of Cordova. Why would I use WebWorks over Cordova?
As far as,
Like, just in general, like, why would I lock into BlackBerry when I can use every platform on Cordova?
Right.
Does WebWorks give me an addition that Cordova does not?
well, that's part of the reason why we're kind of aligning with Cordova better, so you can, the choice is yours ultimately, which framework you want to go with. Obviously, Cordova and WebWorks are tied in real close. I liked using Cordova. I liked using Ant to build everything. I found once I started using Ripple a lot to build, it kind of took that out of the process. There are lots of plugins for PhoneGap already as well. So it's really, I mean, in the end, I would say it'd be up to you as a developer. We're just trying to give you all the options. So if you want to target multiple platforms, definitely Cordova's a great project.
That's a great question. I mean, we had these two different platforms that were, developing side by side each other, and the strategic decision makers at RIM and at PhoneGap decided we should be bringing these closer together because developers shouldn't have to choose between these two web platforms that are doing the same thing. As you mentioned, Cordova does allow you to target different platforms, so BlackBerry and iPhone and Android and so on, whereas WebWorks has traditionally been very focused and optimized just for the BlackBerry platform with more of a richer feature set and APIs. So that's currently the main differences between the two. But as the WebWorks platform is open source, that code is actually being consumed by the Cordova engine, and it's actually the exact same code running under the covers. So you're going to see going forward in the future more and more alignment between the two.
Yep.
So the WebWorks JavaScript options, which are available after the app is compiled, does the Ripple emulator handle those a little better than, let's say, Chrome?
The Ripple standalone?
Well, yeah, I'm wondering if Ripple gives you maybe a more friendly indication that you called that method.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it emulates these features. So let me see if I can show you one that might work. Dialog API. So on a live device, you're going to get the system dialog window, and it's going to look like whatever the actual smartphone is going to implement. And Ripple emulates this behavior in its own way. So as you can see, it actually provides a black pop-up, which isn't the exact same experience, but from a developer's perspective, it gives you a say, okay, my unit test, my check is done. This is behaving as I'm expecting it to. Whether or not that's a better experience, I don't know. I think it's a tough question to answer. It's really up to you and your confidence level in whether or not you feel that that Ripple is actually helping you test your app.
Just better in the sense that it doesn't fail.
Yeah.
Like for instance, if you call a WebWorks, if you're using BBM for WebWorks and you call that method,
Right.
Your JavaScript breaks. I'm just wondering if Ripple handles those better, maybe give you some sort of emulated message.
I see. Ripple definitely makes it easy through Web Inspector to see what's happening under the covers, so you can actually, find any sort of issues or problems quite quickly. I'm glad that you touched on BBM. That's a really good specific example that Ripple doesn't support. So that's a specific API that you can't test conclusively in Ripple, and you would have to use a live device for. There is some functional disparity between the two. There's some APIs, all APIs are available on the device, and Ripple implements as many as it can. But in some cases, such as BBM, it lags behind. Yeah.
Does Ripple also not support the cross-site scripting problems?
No, you can definitely do that. So you can have your web app loading a resource from a different domain as you want. And Ripple has that built into it itself through its extension. Yeah. What it also does is it lets you emulate the actual user agent too. So when you load up a remote site, that site is seeing that request coming in as a BlackBerry device. Yeah, that's a good question.